Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, David Bigalki. I have with me today a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Desmond Robinson. Welcome to the show, Desmond.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you're ready to begin,
Yes.
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself growing up?
I'm originally from North Carolina. It's a town called Gastonia. It's a little suburb outside of Charlotte, roughly 30,000 people. I was born there August 9th, 1981, and lived there up until the time of my enlistment into the United States Marine Corps.
Okay, and what made you think that you should enlist?
Most of my family has been in some form of the military. I had a cousin that was a Marine and a veteran of Desert Storm in 1991. My grandfather was also a Marine and a Vietnam veteran, so I've been around the military life from a child, and I thought it would be a great thing to do. I took ROTC in high school, and it really opened my eyes to the possibilities that the military could offer me. So I decided to go see a Marine Corps recruiter, and after about 3 to 4 weeks of paperwork and checking out jobs, I decided to sign up and give it a shot, and I'm very happy with what came out of it.
So you joined the Marines. Why don't you tell us a bit about boot camp?
Boot camp, for me, wasn't too far away. Parris Island is roughly 3 hours away from my hometown, so it wasn't a big distance factor, but it was very shocking to see what really goes on, because you see the TV shows and they show certain things, and when you get down there, it's a whole new experience for yourself, because you're used to having things done your way, you're used to doing things when you want to, and at boot camp, you're being told what to do, how to do, when to do it, and it's very, very interesting. I had a really good time at boot camp because I had never handled a weapon up until then, so that was my favorite part, was actually going to the rifle range at boot camp, and it's fun because you get to meet people from all over the country, and my bunkmate was actually from Oklahoma, so it was nice to see that you can mix people from other areas and they can work together for a common goal. And Marine Corps boot camp is the longest, and it does get on your nerves sometimes because you've been gone for so long, but I think it's a great tool in training young people into becoming Marines.
Oh, okay, and after boot camp you had to go to specialized training, and what was that like?
Yes, we had 2 weeks of Marine combat training at Camp Johnson, North Carolina, which was, at the time that I went, was mid-January, and it actually snowed, which is odd because it is on the coast of North Carolina. So we got a little bit of winter training in while we were there. And it's very interesting. They teach you hand-to-hand combat tactics and fighting as a squad, because they know not everyone is going to be in the infantry, and they want you to have some basic idea of what to do if you are ever put in the situation. And from there, I was sent to Camp Lejeune for auto mechanics school, which is roughly 3 months long, and you're taught to work on Hummers and 7-ton and 5-ton vehicles and the 12.5-ton logistics vehicle system, which is very interesting school. It's very hands-on, and myself, I had no prior experience with working on vehicles, and it was something I got into. It was very, very challenging, and it's nice to know that you can come out of the military with a skill set. And before then, I wouldn't have known how to change my own oil. Now I can change oil, rotate tires. I know what the engine sounds like when something's going wrong. It's very, very good training, and if you need a skill, the military might be the place to find it at.
Okay, then after your training, where were you assigned? What did you do after you were assigned?
I was assigned to 1st Transportation Support Battalion, which was out of Camp Pendleton, California. And for me, it was one of the better things, because travel was one of the things that it very much interested me about the Marine Corps. So I chose Camp Pendleton, which is in California, and being from North Carolina, the lifestyle in California is very different, and it's very interesting. And I spent 4 years at Camp Pendleton, and we did a lot of convoy training and a lot of maintenance work. And I did go to the MU-15, which was a deployment unit, and we deployed for 6 months to the Eastern Pacific and Western Pacific and Australia, and we went around to the Mediterranean, and this was roughly in late 2001. And we were headed back to the United States and about halfway to Hawaii when September 11th happened, and we were put on hold and we got sent to Okinawa, Japan, where they had us kind of offshore just waiting for orders. And we kind of figured out that we might be sent somewhere else in the world instead of headed home.
And as it turned out, where did you go after that?
We ended up going to Kuwait and setting up at a port in Kuwait because we were to deploy to Iraq. And we were one of the first units there, so we were tasked with setting up the roadways for convoys, and we secured the port and were very much involved with the offloading of the Marines and the Navy at the port in Kuwait, which was, for me, very interesting because I had never seen ships that large, because Marines are usually on the LCACs and smaller ships, and to see an aircraft carrier pull into port with 5,000 sailors and Marines on it is awesome, and it's a great show of American force.
So you were sent to Kuwait, and what was Kuwait like?
Kuwait was very beautiful. The people were very nice. It's very, very historic. You can see it in the architecture. You can see it in the buildings. It's a very beautiful area. The people were, like I said, of the utmost respectful people, and you could tell from Desert Storm of '91 that they were okay with the American population's military being there, and they were helpful. They helped us to decide which ports to use, and they helped us with our supplies because we were not prepared for the vast amount of heat that they have. It's roughly 102, 103 on a daily basis there, and if you keep your water like we did in a metal container, it tends to heat up really fast. And they were very great about supplying us with ice and cold drinks, and it very much kept our motivation high to know that we had civilian people that were there and were looking forward to us being there.
So after Kuwait, where did you go?
After Kuwait, we crossed into southern Iraq, and we set up a base camp roughly 50 miles above the border. And from there, we noticed a lot of tank operations being sent out. And in my job at the time, we really closed down the maintenance shop, went to a skeleton crew, and we became more of a convoy control unit. And we did a lot of security for the artillery regiments and the tank regiments because they were having trouble defending their Humvees and trucks that were carrying their artillery shells. So we got tasked with providing support for them so that they could safely transport their ammunition to the front lines, which was a very big task when you're forward deployed and cannot allow them to run out of artillery, or the units on the ground are in a lot of trouble if they can't get their fire support. So it was very interesting to defend that because the Iraqi insurgents also knew that if you could cut off the artillery, you could get to the infantrymen on the ground with light resistance. So we encountered a couple of IEDs and a couple of frontal assaults, which I tell you is an experience in itself, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was a good experience myself, and it's good to know that the training that you're put through in boot camp and combat training and all the repetitions that you do it while you're in country in the United States pay off when your training kicks in and you're not panicking and you know what you're doing.
So you spent some time in Iraq in like a combat situation. Anything else about Iraq?
Iraq was very interesting because when you move to the north, you typically think that you're going to see more desert, and it's actually green, and there's rivers and palm trees, and it looks more like southern Florida than it does a Middle Eastern country. And when we did get a little bit of downtime while we were there, and we got the chance to go out and check out Baghdad and the local markets, and we had captured one of Saddam Hussein's palaces, and we got to tour that, and there's a lot of history, and it's beautiful. We got to see the Iraqi Museum of Natural History, and with that country being as old as it is, you've seen things and artifacts that were well into the thousands of years old, and it was good to see another culture and to see something other than the United States and to see how they live their life. And the fact that one man was trying to take that away from them, and they were happy to be liberated and to have us there, and it was a great experience to give people the freedom that they wanted and that they needed so that they could go about the lives that they wanted to have. And as the media displays the country as a very anti-American country, it's not as true. And once you're on the ground, there's that 10% of insurgents that they want to fight because they were in power, but the 90% of the population are for the Americans being there, and they're helpful. They will report insurgents, and they'll tell you where you need to go if you're lost in town and your map isn't exactly up to date.
So pretty much does that cover everything that you did while you were in Iraq?
We also got to go to the international airport, which is a giant airport right in the middle of nowhere. You wouldn't expect it to be there, but it is one of the largest airports that I've ever been in, and I've done a little traveling in my time. And to see the writing in Arabic and to see billboards that you would see in the United States for like the NBA or the NFL because they watch their sports in a different language, it kind of brings you back down to earth and lets you know that there's other people in the world. And once the fighting was done with our unit, we did mostly, once we secured the roads, it was a nice sightseeing, actually, because once the roads were secure, you knew that traveling, you got to enjoy it a little more. And beautiful countryside, a lot of sheep herders, and a lot of animals out there, camels and things that you wouldn't see in the United States. And it's just a great experience if you ever get the chance to go there.
Beforehand, you mentioned sports. You got to watch soccer?
Yes, we did get to experience the World Cup. A local Kuwaiti TV station actually brought in some equipment so that we could experience watching the United States play in the World Cup. And we got to experience what it was like watching other cultures, because soccer is very large around the world. And unlike the United States, it is the main sport. And it's awesome watching how these countries really get behind their teams and support them as a whole. And the entire population seemed like they were shut down to support their soccer team because they were representing the nation. And I thought it was a beautiful thing that even though we were in the midst of a combat zone, these people came together to support their soccer team. And I think that sports, it could be learned from something. If we could come together over sports, there's many things that we could come together and agree upon.
Okay. So, anything about Iraq before we move on to what happened after Iraq?
I think that people should take a really good look at the country and what's actually going on there before they just take what the media is giving them, because until you're actually on the ground there, it's a total different story. You see a lot of the fighting and bombing on TV, but that's just the action. You don't see the rebuilding of schools and the training of the new Iraqi army, which is a beautiful thing to me, because a lot of the volunteers for that army were forced to serve and fight in Saddam's army or have their families killed. So the fact that they would come back and knowing that these people that were in the insurgency knew who they were and risked their lives to defend their nation and the freedom of their families was outstanding. And we got to work with one of their mobile transport units, and these guys are roughly our age, a little older, and they've been fighting since they were 12, 13 years old. To see the spirit in these guys, to know that they're taking over and being able to defend their homeland and the right to do what they would like to do is amazing. And I think that's the story that needs to be put on television. Not just the bombings of the insurgents of Americans, but show the Iraqi people who are willing to stand on their own 2 feet and fight for their own country.
Okay, so after Iraq, you left Iraq, what happened then?
After Iraq, we came back to March Air Force Base in California, and I had roughly 6 months left on my tour, and went to a couple of debriefings and classes at Camp Pendleton to see what was available for benefits and college, and it was just a whole new experience to come back to the United States, because after being in such a low technical environment where there's not a lot of technology over there, to come back to the United States, things had progressed. And after a year away of the United States and no technology and coming back, there were so many upgrades that I was kind of lost. The cell phones and cable had changed and gone to high definition, and it was a culture shock, because you're used to living the way of the Iraqi people, and then to come back to the American culture is very odd. But it was welcome to be home and to recognize things and to see things that you hoped that you would see again, because you never know when you're in a combat zone if you're going to make it back. And it was, the American public was great to come back to. They were very thankful, and I got the chance before leaving my enlistment to go home, and big celebration. We had a nice barbecue. It was fantastic to see the support of a lot of people who I didn't know, to just come up and say thank you. And it feels good. It lets you know that what you're doing, and when you're serving, that you're doing it and the people appreciate it. And after that, returned to Camp Pendleton, California, received an honorable discharge from the United States Marine Corps, and then I moved to Wisconsin here in Stevens Point and enrolled in college. And I'm currently taking classes to hopefully become a history teacher. And I'd like to think that someday that this campaign would be in the history books, and that I could tell my students that I was there and this is how it went down. And it would be a great thing to teach the youth that what they see on TV is not exactly how things are going over there.
Okay, now that you've been honorably discharged, do you still keep in contact with some of your old comrades?
Yes, definitely, because I think that it's a very big need to keep in contact when you go through that sort of event in your life, to talk to the people that you went through it with. And I have a real good friend of mine, Sergeant Jacob Lewis, who is on his 4th tour currently in Iraq serving, and he loves it. He says he wouldn't change it for the world. He loves knowing that he is helping less fortunate people become free and to be able to pursue their dreams in life. And we talk twice a month, and he gives me updates so that I know what's going on in the country. And it's a good thing to talk to him, with him still being active, that I can keep up with what's going on in the Marine Corps. And I have a couple other friends that we get together roughly 2-3 times out of the year, and get together and have a barbecue with a lot of the guys that I served with. And it's a good thing because we all travel. A couple are from Ohio, and some are from Texas and Oklahoma, and we get together, and it's good to see the old comrades, to know that they're doing okay, and to bring up the memories and the old war stories and kind of relive the old days. And actually, a couple months ago, being here in Wisconsin, I ran into a buddy of mine that we served together in Iraq, and we did a tour together in the Mediterranean. And it was odd, because we were just shopping one day, and lo and behold, we both look up, and we recognize each other, and we keep in touch almost every day now. And it's good to have someone in the area that I could talk to.
Okay, so we're nearing the conclusion of the interview. Anything that we missed? Anything that you can say that we might have skimmed over?
I'd like to talk about maybe the way the media portrays it, as you shouldn't really believe everything you see on TV. We all know that there are insurgents out there, but the Iraqi people aren't typically like that. If you get on the ground as an American and you get to see these people, and you know that they appreciate what you're doing. Because we also, when I was there, got to deal with some British soldiers who were receiving, the same type of treatment in Britain about, well, why are you going to fight somebody else's war? But they felt the same way we did. These people deserve to have the freedom, and the media wasn't portraying it as such. And I believe that they should really take a different angle to allow the American public and the world to really see that these people are friendly and they just want to be free and have the life choices as any other human being on the planet, and that we did do the right thing by taking their dictator out of power and giving them the freedom that they deserve.
Okay, thank you. I guess previously you mentioned about being a recruiter. Have you got anything to say about that in that regard?
Yeah, I think the recruiters have a rough job now with trying to recruit people, but I think it's a good experience for young people who aren't sure what they want to do with their lives. If you're not sure about college, then give the military a chance. There's a lot of skills you can find, and you're not, I want to say, definitely going to combat if you do choose to join the military. It's not a guaranteed thing to say because you signed up that, oh, you'll be in Iraq the next week or so. There are plenty of occupations and skill sets that you can learn in the military without putting yourself into a combat situation. And if you do decide to go to college afterwards, there's great college programs for money. That way that you get your education for a couple of years of service and you save yourself some money and you're not going into debt trying to pay off college loans. And I think you get the discipline in the military to stick with college and do the right thing. And I think it's a great program. And I think the recruiters do have a tough job lately, but I think they're doing a great job because the numbers are up.
Okay, before we bring the interview to a conclusion, any closing remarks?
I'd just like to say thank you to the American public for all the support, and we love defending this country, and it's a great honor to have defended this nation and worn the United States Marine Corps uniform, and I take much pride in knowing that I was part of something great.
Okay, well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for the interview.
Thank you, anytime.